Hey everyone, this is Karenology. Today's story is so unbelievable. You'll think it's straight out of a movie. Let's get into it. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness of my backyard, bouncing off the wooden fence and casting eerie shadows on the grass. I stood there, dumbfounded, a half-finished beer in my hand, as two uniformed officers stepped through my gate. My wife, Maggie, was frozen beside me, clutching the dish towel she had been using to wipe the table. Our guests, who had been enjoying the warm summer evening, exchanged uneasy glances. The air smelled like grilled steak and citronella candles, the perfect setting for a relaxing night, until it all went to hell. "Sir, step away from the table," the taller cop ordered, his hand resting on his belt. "We received a report of an unlicensed alcohol establishment operating from this property." I blinked. "A what?" Maggie found her voice. "Wait, what? We're just having a birthday party. Who called this in?" I didn't need to ask. The answer was standing at the edge of my yard, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her overly made-up face. Karen, my dear, wonderful neighbor, who had spent the last 3 years making my life miserable with complaints about unsightly decorations, noise violations, and even improper trash bin placement. She was the self-appointed watchdog of the neighborhood, always armed with some obscure rule or regulation, determined to control everything and everyone. Karen's voice rang out, loud enough for the whole block to hear. "Officer, this man has been serving alcohol to people all night. There are minors present. It's completely illegal." "Minors?" I turned to see my teenage niece and nephew, who were sitting on the porch swing, both drinking soda. I gritted my teeth. "Are you kidding me?" The shorter cop sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sir, do you have a liquor license?" I laughed, but it came out more like a scoff. "A liquor license? For my own backyard? Are you serious right now?" Karen wasn't done. "I've seen people coming and going for hours. It's a business. This is a quiet, respectable neighborhood, and we won't stand for this kind of illegal activity." My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. "This is a private party. Everything here was bought with my own money, for my family and friends. There's no business, no sales, just a guy having a drink in his own backyard." The taller cop looked at Karen. "Ma'am, do you have any actual evidence of alcohol being sold?" She hesitated for just a second, but it was enough. Then, as if on cue, she gasped theatrically and pointed to the cooler near my chair. "Look at all that beer. That's way too much for personal use. It's obvious he's running an illegal bar." I exhaled sharply. "It's called stocking up from Costco. You ever heard of bulk shopping?" The cops exchanged a glance. The shorter one muttered, "Sir, we're going to have to take a statement from you. Can we step inside?" I ran a hand down my face. "Unbelievable, fine. But let me just say this. I'm not going to let this slide." Karen's smirk widened. "Oh, I'm sure you won't. But the law is the law." Inside, the cops took their time asking questions. Did I sell alcohol? No. Did I charge guests for drinks? No. Was this a regular event? No. Was anyone underage drinking? Hell no. But the way they looked at me made it clear they had been forced to take this complaint seriously. And that was Karen's real power. Weaponizing the system, twisting minor grievances into full-blown legal battles. When they finally left, issuing me a vague warning about keeping things quiet, I stormed back outside. The party had fizzled out. Guests were awkwardly gathering their things, muttering apologies. Karen had won, at least for tonight. Maggie put a hand on my arm. "Let it go, Rob. She's not worth it." "No," I muttered. "She crossed a line." Maggie sighed. "What are you going to do?" I looked over at Karen's house. She was already back inside, probably filing her next complaint. But something about tonight felt different. This wasn't just another petty neighbor dispute. Something bigger was at play. And I was going to find out what. "I'm going to fight back," I said, gripping my beer can so tight it crumpled in my hand. She wants a war? She's got one. The summons arrived 2 days later, folded neatly in an unmarked envelope and taped to my front door. A formal complaint filed against me with the city for unlawful alcohol distribution and public disturbance. My blood boiled as I skimmed the document. Karen wasn't just playing petty games anymore. She was trying to ruin me. Maggie was in the kitchen when I stormed in, waving the paper like a battle flag. Look at this! She actually filed an official complaint. She's dragging the city into this now. Maggie sighed and took the paper from me, scanning the text with a tired expression. Rob, I know you're mad, but maybe we should just what? Let her get away with it? Let her paint me as some kind of criminal? My voice came out sharper than I intended. I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled slowly. This isn't just about me having a drink in my backyard anymore. She's got an agenda. Maggie set the paper on the counter. So what are you going to do? Fight the city? I clenched my jaw. Damn right I am. I spent the next few hours making calls. First to a lawyer, costly, but necessary. Then to City Hall, requesting details on the complaint. Turns out, Karen had gone all in, citing not just the supposed illegal bar, but also excessive noise, unauthorized gatherings, and hazardous conditions. I almost laughed. Hazardous conditions? She was really reaching. That night, I sat in my office, going through old emails and neighborhood newsletters, trying to find anything that might help me. Then something caught my eye. Karen's name on a committee for local zoning ordinances. My stomach twisted. She wasn't just a bored neighbor with too much time on her hands. She had influence. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I went to City Hall in person. The clerk at the counter, a weary-looking woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, barely glanced up. Name? Robert Hayes. I need to see the official complaint filed against me. She sighed, typed something into her computer, then handed me a thick file. Here. But if you're looking to contest it, you'll need to file an appeal with the zoning board. I flipped through the papers. Karen had attached photos, grainy, poorly framed shots of my backyard with guests holding drinks, my cooler in the background, and a particularly damning image of my niece reaching for a soda can that, to an untrained eye, could easily be mistaken for beer. The setup was perfect, too perfect. My gut told me Karen hadn't taken those pictures herself. Who submitted the photos? I asked. The clerk glanced at the file. Anonymous source. I gritted my teeth. Of course! I left City Hall more determined than ever. Karen was hiding behind loopholes and technicalities, but I wasn't about to let her destroy my reputation. If she wanted a war, she was going to get one. But I needed help. I stopped by a local diner where my friend, Alex, worked as a journalist. He was sipping coffee at the counter when I slid the complaint file in front of him. You up for some investigative work? Alex raised an eyebrow. What am I looking at? Karen. She's coming after me hard, and I think she's got someone feeding her intel. I need to know who. He flipped through the file. You realize she's not just a neighborhood busybody, right? She's been involved in half the zoning disputes in this city for the last 10 years. She's got friends in high places. I leaned forward. Then it's time to find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Over the next few days, Alex dug into public records, while I started speaking with neighbors. Carefully, discreetly. Most didn't want to talk. Some outright refused. But one person, an older man named Howard, agreed to meet me behind his garage. Howard lit a cigarette with a shaky hand. You know what you're getting into, right? Karen ain't just some nosy neighbor. She's connected. To who? He took a long drag, exhaling smoke through his nose. Developers, local politicians. She helps push people out when they don't fit the image she wants for the neighborhood. You're just the latest target. My stomach dropped. Why me? Howard flicked ash to the ground. Because your place is in the way. Someone wants your land, and she's making sure you give it up without a fight. That night, I told Maggie everything. She's not just harassing us, she's trying to push us out. Maggie looked at me, a flicker of worry in her eyes. Then what do we do? I clenched my fists. We fight back. But first we find out exactly who's pulling the strings. Karen wanted to play dirty? Fine. I was ready to play too. A thick envelope was waiting for me on my porch the next morning, stuffed into my mailbox like a loaded weapon. I tore it open with a sinking feeling, already knowing it wouldn't be good news. Inside was a formal notice. My property was now officially under review for zoning violations. It was worse than I expected. Karen had escalated her attack, and now the city was involved. Maggie stood beside me, reading over my shoulder. What the hell does this even mean? Review for what? I clenched my jaw, flipping the pages. It means they're looking for a reason to fine us, shut us down, maybe even force us out. It's the first step in making our lives hell. Maggie groaned, rubbing her temples. This is insane. We're not doing anything wrong. How can they just come after us like this? Because Karen knows exactly which buttons to push. I tossed the papers onto the kitchen table and grabbed my phone. I need to call Alex. If she's got connections in City Hall, we need to find out who. Alex picked up on the first ring. I was just about to call you. You're not going to like what I found. Hit me. Karen isn't just some meddling neighbor. She's been funneling complaints and zoning requests through the same group of developers for years. You know that new commercial district they're planning? Turns out, your house is sitting right on the edge of their target zone. If they can get you to sell, or get the city to take action, they stand to make a fortune. My grip on the phone tightened. So they're using her to clear out properties? Bingo! And get this, Karen's got a stake in one of the firms involved. If she pushes you out, she profits. My blood boiled. Unbelievable. How do we prove it? That's the tricky part, Alex admitted. It's all through shell companies and backdoor deals. But there's a pattern, and if we dig deep enough, we'll find the link. I just need more time. Time was something we didn't have. That afternoon, a man from the zoning board showed up unannounced. He was polite but firm, walking through my backyard with a clipboard, taking notes, snapping photos. I followed him, trying to keep my voice even. You find anything illegal? He hesitated. I'm just following up on a report. We have to document any potential violations. And who filed the report? I already knew the answer. That information is confidential. I crossed my arms. So you're telling me anyone can file a complaint, no proof needed, and you just show up and start looking for problems? He gave a half-hearted shrug. That's how the process works. I watched him scribble something and snap another picture of my shed. And what if there's nothing wrong? What if this is just harassment? Then the case will be closed. He didn't sound convinced. I stood in my yard long after he left, staring at the spot where he'd been. Karen was winning. She wasn't just filing complaints, she was bending the entire system to her will. And I had no doubt that her next move was already in play. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me sit up, expecting trouble. By morning, trouble arrived. A police car idled in front of my house, and when I stepped outside, a uniformed officer met me at the driveway. Mr. Hayes? We received another report about illegal alcohol sales on your property. Mind if we take a look? I laughed bitterly. You guys have already been here. There's nothing illegal going on. Then you won't mind if we check again. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I stepped aside and let them in. They poked around, asked the same questions, left with nothing. It didn't matter. Karen didn't need them to find anything. She just needed them to keep coming back, keep the pressure on, keep making my life miserable. Maggie stood with her arms crossed when they finally left. How long is this going to go on? As long as Karen wants it to. I exhaled slowly. Unless we stop her first. The problem was we needed proof. Real proof. Something that would expose her. Something so undeniable that even her friends in City Hall wouldn't be able to protect her. And we needed it fast. Alex called later that night. I found something, but you're not going to like it. Try me? There's a meeting tomorrow. A private dinner with some of the city's big shots. Karen's name is on the list. They're talking real estate, rezoning, new developments. If she's involved in the land grab, this is where we'll hear it. I ran a hand through my hair. Where's the meeting? Some fancy restaurant downtown, invite only. Tight security. I frowned. So we crash it. Rob, no, listen. If we can record her talking about this, we have leverage. We can take it to the press, the city, hell, even the state if we need to. But we need hard evidence. Alex hesitated, then sighed. All right, but this is risky. I'm done playing it safe. I checked my watch. Let's get to work. The moment we stepped into that restaurant, I knew we were in over our heads. It was the kind of place where the cheapest bottle of wine cost more than my monthly mortgage, where the waiters moved with the quiet precision of trained operatives, and where people like me didn't just walk in unnoticed. But that was exactly what I needed to do. Alex kept his head down as we followed the hostess past clusters of well-dressed patrons, their murmured conversations barely audible over the soft jazz playing in the background. I could already see the private room ahead, closed off by frosted glass, guarded by a single security guy who looked like he could bench press my truck. Karen was in there. I just had to find a way inside. Alex nudged me. You sure about this? We don't have a choice. We took seats at the bar, close enough to the private room to observe, but far enough not to look suspicious. I watched the door, waiting for the moment someone walked out. It came sooner than I expected. A waiter emerged, balancing an empty tray, and before the door could swing shut, I moved. Sliding off the bar stool, I grabbed a half-filled wine glass from a nearby table, turned too fast, and, just as planned, stumbled straight into the waiter. The glass shattered between us. Damn it! I exclaimed, hands flying up in mock surprise as red wine splattered across his crisp white shirt. The waiter let out a string of expletives in Italian, fumbling for a napkin. Watch where you're going! I am so sorry, I said, my hands raised in surrender. Let me... I reached for another napkin, fumbling with exaggerated clumsiness, keeping his focus entirely on me. Just long enough for Alex to slip past the half-open door unnoticed. The waiter scowled, waving me off. Just go sit down. Right, yeah, of course. I backed away, hands still up, while the door to the private room clicked shut behind Alex. Step 1. Complete. I returned to the bar, heart pounding. Now all I could do was wait. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then my phone buzzed. Alex's text was short and to the point. Got it. Meet me outside. Now. I didn't hesitate. I threw a few bills on the bar and walked out, keeping my pace casual even as my pulse raced. Outside, I found Alex leaning against my truck, his face pale, his hands gripping his phone like a lifeline. What happened? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he hit play on the audio recording. Karen's voice came through, clear as day. Don't care how he fights it. The more pressure we put on, the more desperate he gets. Sooner or later, he'll crack. He either sells, or we bury him in legal fees. Either way, the land is ours. A second voice spoke, one I didn't recognize. And the zoning board? Handled. They'll find violations, make life miserable for him. The health department's next. If that doesn't work, we'll go after his business directly. No one fights us and wins. My stomach twisted. Jesus! Alex nodded. She's not just trying to get you out. She's making an example of you. And she's not working alone. I ran a hand down my face. This is enough to take to the press. Enough to shut her down. Alex hesitated. Maybe. But she's got connections, Rob. If we go public, she's going to hit back hard. You need to be ready for that. I clenched my fists. I don't care. She came after me, my family, my business. It's time she learned what happens when you push too far. That night, I barely slept. Every muscle in my body was tense, my mind racing with the possibilities. But by morning, I had a plan. I called in every favor I was owed. I reached out to reporters, lawyers, anyone who could help get this story out. Karen had built her power on fear and silence. I was about to take both away from her. By the afternoon, the first article dropped. The headline was brutal. Local official caught in property scheme. Leaked audio reveals corruption. My phone exploded with calls. Reporters wanted statements. Neighbors sent messages of support. Even my lawyer, who usually told me to stay quiet, sounded impressed. But the war wasn't over yet. Late that evening, just as I was finally catching my breath, Meg called me to the window. "Rob," she whispered. "Look." I followed her gaze outside and felt my stomach drop. A black sedan idled across the street, its headlights off, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. I exhaled. Guess she's not going down without a fight. Meg folded her arms. "So what do we do now?" I turned from the window, jaw set. We finished this. The black sedan was still there the next morning, parked across the street, as if it had every right to sit there like a vulture waiting for something to die. My gut told me Karen wasn't going to let this go easily. If anything, she was just getting started. Meggie handed me a cup of coffee, her expression tight with worry. "What do we do?" I sipped the coffee. My eyes locked on the dark-tinted windows of the car. "We stay ahead of her. She's playing dirty, but she's desperate now. That means she's going to make mistakes." The article had blown everything open. Karen's voice, her threats, her entire corrupt scheme laid bare for everyone to see. The fallout was immediate. Calls from local news stations, online outrage, neighbors whispering at the grocery store. But Karen wasn't the type to slink away quietly. Alex called just before noon. "You ready for this?" "Depends. What's this?" "Karen's holding a press conference. Today. Trying to spin the story. She's saying the recording was manipulated, that you're running some kind of smear campaign against her." I let out a short laugh. "Of course she is." "It gets better. She's bringing in her lawyer and a few city officials to back her up." My fingers tightened around the phone. "How deep does this go, Alex?" "Deep enough that she's scared. If you weren't a threat, she wouldn't be doing this." Meggie crossed her arms when I hung up. "You're going, aren't you?" "I have to. If she's going to lie about me in front of cameras, I need to be there to shut it down." An hour later, I was standing in the back of a crowded conference room at City Hall. Karen stood at a podium, her hair perfectly styled, her floral blouse chosen to make her look as non-threatening as possible. But her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the crowd like a predator sizing up its prey. "These baseless accusations," she said, her voice smooth and controlled, "are nothing more than an attempt to discredit the hard work I've done for this community. I have always acted in the best interests of our neighborhood, and I will not be intimidated by lies and doctored recordings." A murmur rippled through the crowd. She was good, I had to give her that. Confident, unshaken. But then Alex nudged my arm. "Wait for it." A reporter raised his hand. "Mrs. Caldwell, if the recording was fake, why did 3 separate audio analysts confirm its authenticity?" For the first time, Karen hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, but it was there. A chink in the armor. "Well," she recovered quickly, "I can't speak to so-called experts who have an agenda. What I can say is that I have always followed proper legal channels, and any claims otherwise are entirely false." Another reporter fired off a question. "What about the zoning records that show your direct connection to the developers pushing for this land? Were those faked, too?" Karen's smile faltered. "I have no direct business dealings with any developers." "That's a lie," I said loudly. Heads turned as the room fell silent. Karen's face went pale, her lips pressing into a tight line. I stepped forward, the weight of every injustice she had thrown at me pressing against my ribs like a vice. "I have the proof," I continued. "Signed contracts, emails, Records of her lobbying for zoning changes that would directly benefit her investments. She's not protecting the neighborhood. She's trying to gut it for profit. A dozen reporters scrambled to turn their cameras toward me. Karen looked ready to combust on the spot. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something frantically in her ear. But it was too late. The floodgates were open. "Mr. Hayes," one of the reporters called out, "are you willing to go on record with this information?" I nodded. "Absolutely, and there's more." Karen turned and marched out of the room, ignoring the shouting reporters, the flashing cameras, the growing murmur of outrage spreading through the crowd. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Neighbors calling, reporters asking for statements, even city officials suddenly eager to talk. And then, just as I was about to sit down and finally breathe, the black sedan across the street roared to life and sped away. Meggie gripped my hand. "It's over, right?" I exhaled. "Not yet. But she just lost her best weapon. Now it's her turn to be afraid."